Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. If you listen to my channel at all, I'll probably shock you a little bit with how I'm going to start today, because I got to start by saying people need to lay off Brie Larson. Really, honestly, 100% honestly, people need to lay off Brie Larson a little bit. And why? Because everybody is looking at this supposed disaster that Captain Marvel looks like, or at the very least, the disaster of the advertisement for the Captain Marvel movie, and they're taking all their blame and laying it squarely at the feet of Brie Larson. And when you do that, you miss the big picture entirely. And that's what I want to talk about today, the big picture. Because you have to look at not just what Brie Larson is saying, but why she is saying it. That's the important thing. Now, to begin with, I want to bring to mind a couple of things, which the first one being something that everybody knows. And it's that Marvel and Disney have been working on Captain Marvel for a while now. I mean, a couple of years. You can't make a movie, any movie, without putting a couple of years of work into it from the first concept to the finished product. So they've been working on this for a couple of years now. And the second thing being that, well, I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago, and at that time I thought it was supposition, but right now I think it's a lot more than supposition after what has happened over the last couple of weeks. And it's that Marvel, in preparing and making this movie over the last couple of years, assumed that everybody was going to like it. They assumed that you and I and everybody else was going to like the movie, or at the very least assumed that we were all going to go see it. And someone might say that, doesn't everybody who makes a movie assume that people are going to go see it? I would say no. I would say that when people make a movie, they put their best effort forward and are hoping that everybody will go see it. I mean, that's why you have test audiences. That's why you have reshoots, all of these kinds of things. Because you're not assuming that your product is automatically going to be accepted well. But Marvel and Disney just put into all of their preparations the assumption that everybody was going to go see this movie. And when you put those two things together, you see that this is why their advertisement campaign is going the way that it is right now. Because people are asking, why didn't, after that first time they saw it wasn't going well, why did they keep putting the same thing out there? In interview after interview after interview. After the first time or the second time or the third time, why didn't they stop? Well, because partly they couldn't stop, because they've been working on this for a couple of years and they calculated into the entire thing that people were going to like it, and so their advertisement campaign was calculated to go this way. And that's a juggernaut that you can't turn around on a dime. But I would also assert that even if they could stop it, even if they could have changed it, they wouldn't. Because this is the intent of the entire movie. And all we have to do is look at the words of Brie Larson herself. Because we know from Brie Larson that when she was trying to figure out whether or not she would join the cast of the MCU, she went and talked to Marvel. And Marvel told her, in her words, that they wanted to make a big feminist movie. And in the words of the directors, they said they wanted to make not just a feminist movie, but also a humanist movie. And Brie Larson said to the people at Marvel, well, that's great. I'm looking for a platform in order to promote my activism. And both of them basically looked at each other and said, great, we're on the same page. We both want the same thing. And so she joined the cast of the MCU. So here's the thing. Brie Larson's activism is identity politics. I mean, that's why she says, I don't want to hear from white dudes. I want to have people of color and women and disabled people interviewing me. This is what I want. That's identity politics. So when she went to Marvel and said, this is my activism, I want to put it into the platform that I'm going to use, and Marvel said, we want to have a big feminist movie, they're both basically agreeing that this big feminist movie was going to be made about identity politics. But here's the thing. You'll notice that, in Brie Larson's own words, Marvel had already prepared, before even approaching her, to make Captain Marvel into a big feminist movie. That was their intent. Before they even had a star for their movie, that was Marvel's intent. So that has been Marvel's intent for the last couple of years. And we can zoom out even a little more and look at an even bigger picture, because Captain Marvel is supposed to be the first movie in the second phase of the MCU. It's also supposed to be the linchpin that holds together both the first phase and the second phase, that connects them together, because the first phase of the MCU is supposed to end with Avengers Endgame. And the second phase of the MCU is supposed to start with Captain Marvel. And those two overlap, where Captain Marvel is the linchpin holding the two together. But the point is this: Captain Marvel, being the first movie in this phase, this second phase of the MCU, it is supposed to set the tone for the entire second phase of the MCU. And besides that, Marvel would have been planning their next phase of the MCU long before they started work on the Captain Marvel project. So it was probably like 5 years ago that they decided what the second phase of the MCU was going to look like. And this second phase is going to be given its direction with the Captain Marvel movie. So I would say for more than 2 years, probably up to 5 years, Marvel has been planning to make the second phase of the MCU, kicking it off with a big feminist identitarian politics movie. This was their entire plan for more than a couple of years. And this is their entire plan moving forward. Now, will every movie that comes out in the second phase look like this? Probably not. But you have that underlying message which Captain Marvel is supposed to put as the basis for all of these movies, being the head of the MCU, because she's supposed to be the main character for the MCU moving forward. So the point here is that Marvel is the one to blame for this. Marvel and Disney have been preparing to make this big feminist movie long before Brie Larson came along. Brie Larson is just a symptom of a much larger disease. Much larger disease. And if we zoom out even more, we can take a look at what that looks like. Now, I've been covering a number of different people who work for Marvel over the last year and what they said over the last couple of years, and I want to highlight some of their exact words here. People like G. Willow Wilson, who is a novelist, worked for Marvel Comics and developed Miss Marvel, and now works for DC Comics. People like Kelly Sue DeConnick, who actually created this incarnation of Captain Marvel, worked for both Marvel and DC, and is now writing comic book movies, and people like the two directors of the Captain Marvel movie. So I'll concentrate mostly on what G. Willow Wilson said, because she said it most succinctly when she did her interview with the New York Times a couple of months ago. She said that what her motivation to get into the arts was, what her plan was to do when she got into the arts, it wasn't to entertain people, and it certainly wasn't to produce a good product. It was to use her art as a platform to promote her quote-unquote progressive agenda. And she is typical of all of the people that are in the arts right now. I would say a lot of the people in Hollywood, a lot of the people making movies. They see it as their job not to provide entertainment, not to provide a good product, but to use this platform to promote a progressive agenda. That's specifically what she said she got into the arts to do. And if you look at people, again, like Kelly Sue DeConnick, who is now writing superhero movies, she did a talk where she specifically said that once you have that platform and access to that audience, you do wrong if you don't promote a progressive agenda, if you don't use it as a platform for activism. This is specifically what these people see as their jobs. And this is reflected in the words also of the two directors for Captain Marvel. Now, it's very telling when you look at the article about G. Willow Wilson, because she talks about a bit of a turn in what she saw her job as being. And that turn centers around what happened in the last election. All right? She said after that point, she changed from just being a person who used her art to promote progressive messages, but she became, in her words, a bulwark. That is to say, a stronghold, where, in her words, leftist leaders, progressive leaders, could retreat to, so that, in her words, she could provide them with hope fuel, and she could, in her words, arm them with good ideas. And why would she provide them with fuel and arm them with good ideas? Well, you arm someone so that when they get strong enough, when they're ready, they will go out and attack. So that's how she sees her entire job right now, as providing hope fuel and arming these progressive leaders so that they will eventually go on the attack. Because these people believe that the world, and especially America, right now is a living hell. They really believe this. One of the women that was in the last Women of Marvel podcast, when they were talking about the Captain Marvel movie, she said that our society is so dark. It is a black hole of a pit. That's what she called it. Okay, that's how these people see our society today, as a hellhole. Why? Because people are turning away from their far leftist agenda. That's why. And these people, they use military terms a lot, and they use them a lot because they realize they're in a culture war. They know that. I mean, even academics admit it now. We're in a culture war, all right? And these people, they know they're in a culture war. And these people are trying to attack the other side by promoting their quote-unquote progressive agenda. And here's the thing. In our culture, what are the big guns? Well, the big guns are television and movies. So, of course, they're going to use television and movies as their weapons, as their main weapons to counterattack with. That's what they're doing. And so, a lot of people are asking the question, this is Disney. Can't they just look over at Star Wars, which is one of their franchises, and see that this kind of stuff is not going to work? That they're going to destroy the fandom, and they're going to destroy their moneymaker by doing this. The thing is, they don't care. They can see it in Star Wars, they can see it in Ghostbusters, in Star Trek, and in a lot of other things. They can see that it's going to destroy this product. They don't care, because they're not producing these movies for entertainment's sake, and they're not producing these movies for making a good product. They're using them as a weapon to counterattack in the culture war so that they can turn people back towards their progressive message. That's specifically what they're doing. And the thing is that there's a very specific reason why they choose fandoms to do this. It's because their progressive ideology runs on feelings. All right? It doesn't have anything to do with reason whatsoever. Quite literally, these people think that reason is a part of the patriarchy, that reason itself is an institution of white supremacy. And I'm not joking. That's what they believe reason itself is. And their ideology is taught through feelings. That's how they promote it, through feelings. And I'm going to do an entire video about that in its connection with Marvel Comics soon. But the thing is that when they look at these fandoms, fandoms are also built on feelings. That's the thing. You have these fans. They love their fandom. They love the characters. They love the movies. They love the books. They simply love their fandom. So it's already an emotional thing. So they're looking at these emotional things and saying, hey, let's use that as a vehicle, because we have to teach these people our progressive agenda, and we have to do it through feeling. So we'll use that feeling that they're already exposing themselves to with these fandoms. We'll tie it up with our progressive agenda, and therefore we will weaponize these fandoms so that we will counterattack in this culture war and then bring people back towards our quote-unquote progressive agenda. This is specifically why they target fandoms. This is specifically why they are using fandoms, like Star Wars, like Ghostbusters, like Marvel, like Star Trek. And the thing is that the reason why you really have to stop looking so much and blaming Brie Larson so much is because when you look at that bigger picture, you realize that these people are not going to stop. When you give them any money for these movies, when these movies do well at all, they take that money and they say, hey, look, our plan is working. Therefore, let's keep on doing the same thing with this fandom until it dies, and then we'll move on to the next fandom. And that's the entire thing. Because if you support them in doing this to any fandom, you are giving them the green light to move on to other fandoms which you may love as well. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.